Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Clap Podcast for our second interview special. I am really fortunate to have another incredible guest joining us this week. We have Batu Sener joining the show, who's worked on some remarkable films, including the new Robbie Williams biopic Better Man, Harold and the Purple Crayon, and Ice Age: The Adventures of Buck Wild. He currently works at Five Cat Studios, run by John Powell, so he's worked on some additional music for some of his scores. That includes Wicked, Solo: A Star Wars Story, and How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. Batu has an incredible CV, and we're really lucky to get him on the show. We are especially fortunate that he could come and join us, as he lives in LA, and currently they're going through devastating wildfires, so it meant a lot that he could come and join us on the show. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and we'll see you on the other side.
Yeah, it's been rough, I have to say. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
But we got lucky, and then the studio survived the fires with a little bit of external damage, but we can't get back in there for a while. I mean, just on the road, 24 houses burnt down, so the whole infrastructure and power and everything is kind of... nothing's working really, and it'll take some time to clean up and all that, so we'll get back in there. We're temporarily just situated at a different studio until the end of the projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, it means a lot that you come on during this time. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem.
Well, I'd just like to sort of start at the beginning if I can, and I just wanted to start off by asking you if you remember a piece of music or a moment that prompted your journey into the world of composing.
I'm not sure if I have that one well, actually I do, but I have a memory way earlier than that, the way I got into really music, because I used to train as a classical performer in piano performance, and my earliest memory in music that made me go, oh, I've got to do this, was watching a TV show. It must have been a rerun of it, and then certainly not an American TV show, but it was a late night show. I think it was Frank Sinatra hosting. I don't know if it was a one-off special or it was like a weekly thing. I don't know. And then he comes on stage and says, good night and blah, blah, and then introduces Ella Fitzgerald. And then she comes on and then sings, before she even says anything, she sings Body and Soul. And then that was the very first time I remember anything of my first memory, basically, when it comes to music, is watching that, thinking, what am I hearing right now? And then I was very, very impressed at the time. So that was my first memory about music, and thinking, whatever that is, I want it, basically. I want to be able to do it. But when it comes to composing, I always liked writing music, even when we were in like high school and having harmony lessons, so I'd take those little assignments very seriously, and I would just do way too extra for it, and I'd get to come to class and play, and everybody would be like, dude, this is just a harmony homework, like, settle down. But I would take all that so seriously. Anyway, I really liked writing music all the time as I was practicing performance, but it wasn't until I watched WALL-E, that Pixar movie. I remember going into that movie, I didn't really know much about it. I didn't even watch the trailer for it. And I remember watching the film, and after it was over, I was a different person. That's for sure. I remember saying to myself clearly, whatever that was, whatever that music created, I want to be able to do that as well. So that's the moment that I've decided that I was gonna actually take composing seriously and become a composer as professionally.
Absolutely. That opening of WALL-E, where it's essentially no dialogue and it's just told
for like
through
45 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible with that opening, and just the characterization and the way the music takes you through. You feel instantly connected to Wally, and then when Eva comes along and things like that, it just, the way the score carries you through those moments is remarkable.
Yeah, it was such an unexpected thing for me. I always liked music in movies, but I never even thought about that as a career. I didn't even like. It was two dots waiting to be connected, really, and for some reason that movie did it for me.
Yeah, that's so exciting. It's incredible to hear like that kind of story from someone like you, because like I'm a film student, and sort of this podcast is all about trying to show people what it's like working at different places within the film industry, and it's incredible to hear that like that relationship with music drove you towards filmmaking and telling stories. And I just wanted to ask, could you share your journey sort of from where you began to kind of starting to work at Five Cat Studios and collaborating with John Powell? Because it's just a tremendous achievement to be a part of that studio and work on the remarkable films that's coming out of there.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a little bit of right place, right time, I think. I after watching that film, Wall-E, the first thing I was like, okay, Google, how do you do this as a whatever, and then comes up Berklee College of Music, which is fine. I had a great time there, but that was the way I came to America, basically, become a student. I was already in a conservatory second year, I think, and I just left that school and I came to America, did Boston, Berklee there for 2 years, and then after that I went to do a grad school in Chicago, not because I'm in love with school, or I actually never liked school, but it was just I wasn't ready to come to Los Angeles and just do all of this, and I was only 22, so I did a grad school thing in Chicago, which was equally whatever. I mean, it's school, whatever you make of it. And then part of that school was guaranteeing that the students graduating from their master's program would get placed in an internship in Los Angeles. They had this like extension of a semester that they send everybody packing and going to Los Angeles, and then they will have arranged your internship before you got to LA. And then that year, the school got word that John Powell was gonna take an intern, and obviously we all got so excited. We all submitted our little whatever, and I suppose I got lucky that John picked me to be an intern for that summer part of the school. And then the whole promise of it is that we made the connection for you, and as school gets out of the way, you graduate, you now have a master's degree, which becomes immediately useless after that. But and then it's kind of up to you if you're going to be able to continue your internship or move up from there where you started. But that's how I got to Five Cat Studios, basically. Which was, I mean, years later I asked John about like why he picked me, and then he said a bunch of stuff which I'm not sure if he's telling the truth about. Oh, he heard something, maybe. I don't know if he... knowing him and knowing how busy he is, I don't think he had time to sit and listen to like 10 applicants' demos from college. Like he didn't do that. Yeah. He must have seen some of the stuff. I don't know. In the end, he picked me, and that's where we are. So that's how I met John, which obviously is very, very... one of the best things that's ever happened, because ever since then I became his assistant after that, and then every project he takes on, I started writing more and more music for him, and eventually I've currently continued to work out of his studio, doing my own projects as well as helping him on his films.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a remarkable trajectory of your career, and especially coming into 2 big films you worked on this year with Better Man, and providing additional music for Wicked. Just 2 remarkable films, and it's just incredible what you've done. I wanted to ask about your collaboration with John. How does that actually? What does it look like on a sort of a day-to-day basis when you guys get a project and he's starting to write music? What does that collaboration sort of look like?
It depends. It's different on every film, but the way it works is just like how I do it myself. We get to film. we watch the film without music. We mute the temp music basically just to see what the movie actually is in its core. And then as you watch the movie, you take notes, and then we do this together sometimes, and sometimes John gets to go to the studio and watch with the director elsewhere, and I get the movie later. Doesn't matter, but fundamentally we watch the movie, we take notes about the film, and then you see what's important, which characters are good, and which what place and what idea is worth having a musical equivalence, basically. And then you then, when I say you, I mean if it's a John Powell film, then he would do this. If it's my own film, then I would do it. He would, or I would sit and come up with tunes for all these characters, or the places, or the idea, whatever it may be, the bad guy, the good guy, all of that. And then once you have those melodies, the tunes, the riffs, whatever, the sort of thematic material that you have to create, the way him and I collaborate is at first we have to sit and kind of prove it to ourselves without even presenting it to anybody, that if that idea is worth pursuing. So there'll be let's say a main character tune, and then John would have a tune, and he would write it on a piece of paper, lead sheet with some, like the first basic version of it basically. And then I'll take it and I'll make a big romantic lush version of it, and then he would do a big action version of it, and then I would do another one that's a bit more adventurous, maybe, whatever it is. Then we'll try we'll basically arrange the melody several times over, just within ourselves, in a very internal process, just to prove. And then you listen to it, the arrangements that you do, and then you make tweaks into the melody. Oh, this shape would be better, or this if it turned around, if it repeated this bar, it would be better. And then once you get through all this process and you have your melodic material ready, and then you proved it with different arrangements that you're going to later maybe possibly use in the film, then you can present it into the directors and the producers. So the first part of the collaboration is that's just getting all our materials together, and then after that we start putting it to picture, and then it depends how we approach the scoring. But there's different ways that John and I work together, meaning he would either we can sit and talk about a scene, and he see what you can come up with. Obviously that means using all the material that he created, and maybe possibly some of the arrangements that we've done, take that and extend it and shorten it, whatever. That would be the first way that we work together. Or he would sometimes do a complete map of the cue just on the piano and say, basically this, I've figured it out, it's at this tempo, it's going to be this melody, it's going to be this counter melody, whatever, but it's just done on the piano. And then I would take that and orchestrate it in the computer. And some other times he would sit and do like an 8 bars or 16 bars, completely fleshed out, orchestrated, absolutely finished, like ready to record section of the cue, and he says something like this, and then you have to sit and continue that, because probably it's an action cue that he's now done in 60 films, and then it takes so much time and too many MIDI notes to basically program. So he'll do like the basic idea of it. It's something like this. Now you get to carry this for another 50 seconds, for example, and then keep it interesting and continuing, that sort of thing. And then I do everything, put it back to him. He listens to it, fixes stuff, changes stuff, whatever he wants to do it. Eventually gets to a stage that it's ready to present, and then we just rinse and repeat.
Right, absolutely. That's an incredible process. I wanted to ask specifically about the How to Train Your Dragon Hidden World, because I listened to that album and I can see the film through the music, and I especially love listening to your piano solos for that film too, which I think is remarkable. So I've got to give you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really do enjoy listening to that, and I just wanted to ask what it was like contributing to like a highly anticipated finale. I mean, John sort of earned his Oscar nomination for the first film. What was it like when you were stepped into that world and were able to sort of help craft the third score?
It's at first it was very nerve-wracking, I think, because of the pressure and then the popularity of the franchise. But pretty quickly it became clear that actually we were we were on safe grounds because the director Dean, he was in complete trust of John, and the studio at this point. They've already seen it work twice, and then they were all very supportive of basically everything. So we had quite of an amazing kind of, I would say, a textbook version of Hollywood, where the picture was locked, the animation was finished, the director completely trusted the composer, the studio was always behind it. So it was basically the perfect conditions of that we actually never get to experience. If I were to pick one project that I was a part of as an additional composer, that would be the best one. And despite that, John didn't necessarily fall back on all the existing material too much. It was a different story. It was a new story. Yes, it was a continuation of a story and of the music that we've heard before, but it was still so very special. And then when you finally hear some of the familiar tunes come back, then they're even more impactful. So it was lovely that way. And the Piano Solos album was simply a pandemic project because I had already done the arrangements for Hal Leonard. That they do these piano arrangement publishing little books that you can buy and play. I'd already done all of that, but and then that they're basically known for that sort of stuff anyway. They publish also some music, but particularly in film music, they do these easy or normal, as you say, difficulty piano arrangements of things, and then they just sell it. That's sort of their business. And in this particular one, they reached out to me for me to do it, and then I had already done it, and it was a bit more than normal. I think it was a bit difficult. However, they were actually, I spent a lot of time nicely, like made it into actual piano pieces rather than like a very simplified harmony and the melody sort of thing. So that already existed, and then when the pandemic started and everybody went home, John and I made an arrangement that I would be the only one to go to the studio is large enough that nobody would ever run into one another, but I would be the only one going to the studio. Not even he was there really. And then I had a microphone set up. John had a very lovely Stanway in his studio, so I just sat and recorded all of that, and then that's how that album came to be. Just simply out of boredom.
Well, I'm glad it did. I really, really enjoy it.
No, thank you.
You had a huge year in 2024. I mean, you're a part of two big musicals. Obviously, Better Man, which is just a phenomenal film. I have to say, I loved it. And you were also a part of the additional music for Wicked. I wanted to ask about your relationship with musicals, because these are two huge projects. And what is your relationship with musicals?
Pretty good. I love musicals. I think my favorite musical movie, I suppose, would be Chicago, but that's also after watching the stage show in New York. It may also be my favorite musical on stage, but there's so many good musicals out there. But I always enjoyed musicals, and I didn't necessarily think that I wanted to be a part of a musical. It's simply because it's tricky. Let's just be honest. It's very, very tricky when you have to deal with existing material, especially in the case of Wicked, where it's this massive worldwide phenomenon, right? It's like all these songs are so well known, so you're having to be very, very careful of the source material, basically. Better Man is much different because it's not necessarily musical like Wicked. It's the songs are used to tell the story, but the score doesn't necessarily have much to do with them. Some parts of the score are based on maybe the harmonic language of some of the songs, particularly the Better Man title song. But however, it was much more free than what Wicked was, I suppose, as far as what you could bring on to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. That was very similar to my next question, because I was wondering if musicals are freeing or a little bit more structured for a composer. Is it more, did you have as much room to be creative and really, try something new, or do you feel a little bit more limited by the already existing material? So, yeah, I suppose.
Well, yes, I think you're definitely limited. I mean, it depends on the musical, I suppose. If it's an original musical that nobody's ever heard of, then that's probably not the case. But for pre-existing material, it becomes really tricky. But that's what, especially for Wicked, that's what John's really good at, taking an existing little bit of the song and then make it into something that you couldn't even think that would work, but it does work. I mean, there's amazing scenes in Wicked that arranges like the no one mourns the wicked riff or that melody, and then you watch it and you go, oh, as if this was always there, this was always written for that moment in the film. But he's very good at that. I mean, so Wicked was in that way restrictive a little bit, but there's also like over an hour of original music in it. It's not like it doesn't require original music. It certainly does. But for Better Man was difficult in different ways, I suppose. It was really it was a challenge to sort of find the right tone for the score. And then I suppose the score is really mostly taking care of the sort of the dark side of the story, the Robbie's internal struggles and his self-doubt and things that most artists basically suffer from. And then the score is always there in those moments when particularly he gets rejected by his father multiple times, even as a kid, or so it was hard to come up with the language. We've tried. I mean, I'll tell you, I've written 3 hours of music for Better Man. Now the movie is not that long, but out of the 3 hours, we ended up recording and mixing about just under an hour of it. So there was so much of experimenting, basically, just trying to find. And Michael is very, very articulate, the director, Michael Gracie, and then he had different ideas, and then almost every idea he had was good and it was worth pursuing. So he'd be like, oh, let's just do it with vocals because it's the voices inside Robbie's head. And then I'd bring on a singer, and then I'd just do the entire score with vocal material, stuff that I've recorded. In fact, some of it is still in the film. I mean, some of the stuff that you can hear in the score may sound like synths or may sound like strings, but they're actually vocals made into sound like that. They're really hardly processed, crazy stuff. So there was a lot of experimenting with vocals, and then later on with other things, and then other tunes and such. But eventually we ended up with what we have, for all sorts of reasons. But I suppose to answer your initial question is that it's much more trickier than a regular sort of story told in a regular way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just wanted to ask you, you've now gone into composing some of your own films, Harold and the Purple Crayon, films like that. I want to ask, is there a specific moment or piece of music from your filmography that you're just particularly proud of, that really stands out to you as something that's like, this is the one I want people to hear?
Oh, I don't know. That's crazy. I don't know. Every movie, I suppose, every soundtrack has its moments where I go, "Oh, that turned out okay," but I suppose what Robbie Williams is struggling throughout Better Man is basically every artist. Like I was saying, is like sometimes I take a lot of time off from stuff that I've done before. I try never listen to it really, but sometimes I need encouragement. And then I go, wait a second, I've done this before. And I go back and listen to the album, something that I've done. And then I try to keep, just to say to myself, look, you've done it before, you can do it again. Because I'm constantly in fear that I'm never going to be able to do it. And also, you do it, you get to the end of it, it's kind of blurry. You don't remember how you do it. Sometimes people ask me, oh, wow, that cue is so amazing. Like, how'd you do it? And I was like, I wish I could tell you. I mean, I don't know. I sat down and certainly done it all, but you're in some stage that like a mental state where some of the details or the fundamentals of how you end up writing stuff kind of gets blurry. I don't know. Maybe it's amnesia. I'm not sure what it is, but anyway, my point is, I then occasionally go back and listen to something that I've done. I end up saying, "Oh, well, that actually turned out okay. That action, that's quite sad and romantic or whatever." But I try not to praise the stuff that I do because I'm just hoping that the next one is going to be better than the one before.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you came out running with sort of your first score was an Ice Age sequel. I mean, that must have been such a nerve-wracking experience, and you absolutely killed it with that score. So I just wanted to know what it was like when you got, when I'm sure whether you got that phone call or email and they came into the room, and what was your reaction when you heard that?
That whole thing is crazy. I don't think it's very rare for somebody to do their first feature film to be an animation film, and also to be part of a franchise like that. And oh, your boss is Disney now, like it was a lot of pressure. And then the way I found out I was doing that score is actually funny, because I was just minding my own business in my room at the studio at 5 Cap, and then John knocks the door, opens the door, and says, "You're doing the next Ice Age movie," and then sort of giggles and leaves. And I had to follow him and say, "What did you just say?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, they're doing this other Ice Age movie for Disney Plus, and then I said that you could do it." And I suppose they called. The point of the story, they probably called John and say, "Hey, would you like to do it?" and that sort of thing. And then John's like, "Well, no, but I know somebody who can do it, and then I'll make sure it's good," that sort of thing. And then John's been very, very, very kind and very encouraging of my career. So it's very, very fair to say that John basically got me the Ice Age film for me to do, but it didn't change the fact that after he left and after I found out, I sat there in silence and went, I can't do this. Well, I mean, mind you, providing additional music, yes, it's a lot of work, and sometimes the cues that I've done for John is crazy stuff, a lot of action. Like, I can do it, but there's a big difference when you have to just write the piece of music and bring it to the lead composer, and then it's his problem now to fix it, deliver it, sell it to the directors and producers. So he is on the hotspot. I'm just an extension of his arms, basically, another mind. We never have enough time, so you need help when you're working on these scores. Now, I had never been. I've done some short films and blah blah, but I had never been as a lead composer, let alone my first movie being a Disney film. So it was obviously very, very scary, and the whole time I was scared, I suppose. But as soon as I started meeting with the director and the editor and the producer and all that, things got a bit easier. And then I've started doing one of the big action cues in the movie, just because I just needed to prove it, even to myself, that I could do it. Mind you, I've done a massive action cue on Star Wars or a movie or whatever it is. Like, I've done stuff before, but when it comes to your own, it just feels different, and the responsibility of not only writing the music, but then presenting it to others, especially the director and the producer and the music executives at the studio and everybody. I mean, there's so many people you're presenting your stuff to. So it's a lot of pressure, and I certainly don't have the right personality to be in this business. And John and I joke about this often, because I'm not a salesperson. I'm very quiet. Very introverted, don't really speak to people much. I mean, the idea that you and I are having this conversation is crazy, because inside of me right now, I'm just going, "What are you doing? Stop, don't talk." But yeah, it was definitely a lot of things going through my mind. But I was lucky enough to have John also just come in and listen to like the stuff right before I recorded it, give his 2 cents and that sort of thing. He was very, very kind. He's very kind with his time always, at least with me. So I very much appreciate all that. And then it turned out okay. I think it was overall it was a good score, I think. And then it certainly followed the sort of it fits into the world that John had created starting Ice Age 2, and it was really fun to do in the end.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a beautiful score, and Ice Age is such a well-known franchise that it's incredible that opportunity was given to you. I just want to talk to you about genres, because your filmography has such a wide variety of genres. As you sort of said, you've done action, you've done sci-fi, you've done family adventure, and I did notice that the category that your involvement has been significantly a part of is that family adventure. And I wanted to know what sort of drew you towards that genre of filmmaking. And I'm sure that, as we spoke about at the start, that inspiration for Wall-E, and now you're having the opportunity to work on sort of animated titles as well, which just is a great platform for incredible music. And I just wanted to ask you what it's like working in that genre of that family adventure.
Yeah, just like you said, I think they provide an incredible opportunity to write some actual good music. I mean, I personally really enjoy writing some crazy, complicated orchestral music. I mean, I've always loved it. Even way before all this, way before America, I would sit and listen to like Shostakovich and Prokofiev symphonies and stuff. I mean, I was infinitely impressed by those people who wrote some of the best orchestral music. So I suppose family adventure and family animation is the kind of genre that still accepts, I should say, that kind of music. Like when it comes to a big final battle in an animated film, you just go all in. I mean, you just do whatever. I mean, obviously you have to have the right thematic material, your tunes, melodies, everything needs to be there in order, otherwise it'll just be ramblings. But it, like for Ice Age or for Harold and the Purple Crayon, it's just they're fantasies, right? So there are all these some crazy scenes where when you watch it, you go, oh, I mean, it's kind of silly, but then you put the music to it, and it all of a sudden makes everything real, and that reality comes with this really butch, intentional orchestral music, and then that's what I like the most. So that's why I incline to do family entertainment films, because those still allow that kind of music that I really enjoy writing. Plus, Hollywood has the finances to record that music for you. I mean, otherwise, how would you put together? I mean, you can if you have the money, but like these sessions cost a lot of money, either in LA or in London. I've sometimes do stuff in Budapest as well, but so they have the finances, and if then you have that little bit of a pressure behind your ear, be like, oh, they're about to spend $400,000 to record this in whatever. So you're also trying to be like, I'm not going to waste this opportunity. I've got to come up with the best material that I can. So that's why family entertainment is great to work in. And then I actually think that more genres would eventually go back to having more orchestral films. I think nowadays, as I'm sure everybody knows, that the scores sometimes they're minimal, sometimes they're more than minimal, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, I think we're maybe hoping, at least my hope is that we're going to get out of that a little bit and back into more melodic. It doesn't have to be orchestral, but at least more melodic scores, where the value of a tune that associates with a character or whatever is actually appreciated. But we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. That sort of John Williams, the scores that just stay in your head and are now a
Yeah,
part of the culture. I love that. Yeah. Oh, I
yeah.
wanted to ask you, moving between projects to projects. So you had Buck Wild and Harold, sort of two family films, and now you've got Better Man, which is
Hmm.
not sort of for kids. And I wanted to ask, is there anything you've learned? Yeah, is there anything you've learned moving from those projects that you brought into Better Man, when you were developing that score?
Uh, Better Man was actually what I was just saying about minimalism. I suppose Better Man in its core is pretty minimal. The score,
Right.
because really the big bombastic music moments are handled by the songs. So
Mm.
coming from a family entertainment where you've got the entire orchestra ready for you, waiting to play crazy stuff. I had to learn to be simpler, which was not easy because I didn't exercise that ever. So like when my first reaction to Robbie as a kid and his father leaving him or whatever, me like, all right, bring out the who like Rachmaninoff in you. Like you've gotta do this. This is the most heartbreak. And in fact, think about it. I mean, for that little kid, his dad not being at his little school show is the end of the world because he doesn't know any other pain. So that is the most pain he's ever gonna feel at that moment. So my approach would always be, oh my God, just go and make everybody cry. This is the end of the world for this kid. But in the bigger scheme, in the bigger scheme of things, you can't really do that because it would be a bit too over the top, especially right at the beginning of the film. I mean, I suppose creatively you can have that decision, say, I want this to be the worst thing that's ever happened in cinema history ever, and you can score it that way. However, that wasn't our intention in the end, and so I had to kind of learn to restrict myself from doing that. So sometimes some little strings and a little bit of a piano melody is all you need, particularly when you have narration also helping you sort of helping the audience understand what's going on, right? So the music doesn't maybe have to do as much as some of the other movies and other scenes when there's no narration and there's no dialogue and then music's the only driving force. I remember there's a scene in Buck Wild where Buck gets captured by the bad guys, and then it feels like the whole Union, the underworld, the Lost World, whatever it's all gonna fall apart basically. And it's this like almost 2-minute section when there's really no dialogue. It's almost like a montage of him getting taken away. You get to see everybody's sad faces, all the other characters that we know. So you have 2 minutes of just collapse of unity in this world. So then you go out with that stuff. Whereas in Better Man, you didn't have to be that dramatic.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think composers play such a unique role in storytelling, and obviously the emotional connection, as you sort of touched on, between the audience and the story. So, what has your relationship been like with storytelling, and like how do you view the composer's place? Because I'm sort of thinking about the way you were talking about before with Better Man, where you don't want to start off with like it's the end of the world, especially at the start of the film. You sort of want to, it is for this kid, but sometimes it's better to be a little bit more subtle. But when I'm sort of thinking of something like John Williams with E.T., where the score builds, and then when he eventually flies over the moon, you're just so emotionally connected to that moment because the score sort of teased you to this massive moment. And I just wanted to ask about sort of your relationship with storytelling in that way, and when you're crafting a score, how did those sort of thoughts about building and then choosing the right moment to sort of drop that incredible, that song that's going to stay with people. And I just wanted to ask about that process for you.
Yeah, E.T. is a great example of that. But I suppose I've learned directly from John Powell, that is, and there's plenty of others who approach scoring that way. But I'm on board completely with the way John Williams has always done it, and Powell always does it, and others, where if you have the right material musically, now you're part of the story from the very, very beginning. Just like the dialogue, just like the visuals that we see, the music and the melody, especially if it's attached to a character, is part of the story. And then you're placing it in the right spots, most likely subconsciously help the audience connect to that character. So for Harold, let's say, he's got his own tune, starts very beginning when he was in the book, and then that tune carries us all the way through the very, very end. And then normally, I suppose film structure is always kind of the same, but normally about 2/3 of the way in, the low kind of happens, right, in the story. Then you're gonna have to get back up and then end in a happy note. So by the time you get to that low point, we've heard Harold's tune or Buck's tune in Ice Age or any other so many times over in different ways, and fun and emotional and action and whatever. When you finally get to that moment in story that Harold's heart's broken, he's upset, and then he thinks it's the end of the world, and now your music and then your melody that was presented to the audience this entire way finally reaches to that. I suppose this could be a happy moment too, just like in E.T., the flying bit, but for Harold, in this case, the worst thing, he doesn't believe in himself anymore, and then we hear his tune in the most heartbreaking way, and then that, even if you weren't invested up until it, which you should be, but you're being led to that moment, and then when that moment happens, your heart breaks for this character. So the composer's role in this storytelling is actually pretty profound. I mean, it's now sometimes there are movies where there don't have any score, and then that's absolutely fine too. But if you choose to have music as part of the soundscape, dialogue, sound effects, and music, one of these three, it needs to have the same attention to detail, I suppose, as anything else. Because, if you see a car and you hear the car engine coming and going, and then it's Atmos, it's moving around you, whatever, right? And then the dialogue is important. Everything that they say is there for a reason. There's no extra dialogue just for dialogue's sake. And the music is the same way, so it needs to have the same attention. That's why we sit and meet with directors and producers of each film and discuss all these scenes endlessly, because we need to find the best way to convey musically what's going on in the story. And then you're as much of a filmmaker as anybody else. All composers are filmmakers before they're musicians, really, because that's what you're doing. You're telling a story, and then your tools happen to be music, and then others are sound or visuals. And then so it definitely worth studying film over music, maybe, if you're going to get into this business.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that makes, of course, yeah. That's really good advice. I wanted to ask as well about the absence of music in certain moments and the composer's decision on that. And I wanted to know, have you had a point in your composing career where you've had to make that decision, sort of this moment, a lack of music could be more powerful, and then when that score comes in, it could have more impact?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it depends on certain, particularly in Better Man, we had plenty of these moments. That's why I had an hour of music recorded, but only maybe half of that's in the movie. It's simply because I suppose it's good practice in this business to write more music than you need, because the decision can be made at the last minute, be like, this works better without music. But certain scenes, the acting is so good, and then the way it's filmed and shot and edited, all that is so powerful in itself that sometimes music could be a distraction. And this is hardly in the happy or joyful moments, but it's mostly in the dark and low moments in story, where sometimes the raw nature of just watching somebody that you've not cared for an hour and a half maybe be saying something that is so disruptive to their being or whatever it may be, not having any music around it helps you focus maybe better and actually feel the raw emotion that comes out of that scene, because music could sometimes feel like you're getting manipulated to feel something, which is also something that I always, I mean, most composers in this business have to be very careful about, because you would never want to be ahead of the audience, right? Like, you can't give away with your music what's happening. You can't give away. You can't also force people to feel in a certain way, because then they will absolutely catch on that, and then they will feel the complete opposite and say like, well, this movie is forcing me to feel bad for this person, but I know that they're not. But I mean, the audience could immediately basically stop. So lack of music sometimes is the best way to get through a scene where something raw and emotional needs to be transferred. But it also depends on the audience that you have. It's more likely to occur in an R-rated movie than it is on a PG movie, because if your audience is between the ages of, let's say, 6 and 16, not having music could be a danger, because their attention span is not going to be able to continue for an hour and a half. That's why most family entertainment movies don't go past that time, because that's about the right time to get an attention from a kid or from a young a teenager. So you'd see less. That's why most animation films like wall-to-wall music, because you've got to help with the story, and you've got to maybe lead some of these younger audiences. But I've experienced the lack of music, or at least having music written and then deciding to not have it on the film, the best way on Better Man. And then maybe some of the other stuff that we've done with John, we had experienced as even in something like How to Train Your Dragon. At the end, this happens. You sit and all of a sudden realize, been watching a scene for 14 minutes and it's non-stop music, and you just need a break. I mean, sometimes that's as simple. Sometimes you just go at the dub stage before you finish the movie. Everybody sort of agrees that extra 30-second cue there that was supposed to whatever, let's just take it out, because I'm so tired from, not physically, but like I'm tired. I'm sort of bombarded with a lot of music, especially in an action animation like something like How to Train Your Dragon. I just need to breathe a little bit, and I can just focus on what they're saying, rather than also having to hear another piece of music right after a long stretch of music. Yeah. So different decisions, but...
Yeah, totally. I've sort of got a big one to wrap up. We've spoken a bit about John Williams in this interview, and I sort of I watched the new documentary on Disney Plus, and there was a quote.
I haven't seen it yet. I need to watch it. Yeah,
it's remarkable, and there's just one quote that stood out to me, and I just wanted to ask about sort of your thoughts on it. But John Williams says that music is enough for a lifetime, but a lifetime is not enough for music. And I just wanted to ask what that quote sort of meant to you, and does it resonate with your journey?
I mean, he couldn't have said it better. It's absolutely true. It's almost hard to follow up to say anything after that, because in itself, it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, there is so much good music out there, that I don't know about. Certainly, most people don't know about, and I cannot describe the feeling that I get when I discover something for the first time that I hadn't heard before. And the older I get, the intensity of these feelings get even larger. But the joy that I feel hearing something for the first time and realizing that I've been a fool to have not come across this piece of music before. And obviously you can't listen to every music that exists. There's no way. But sometimes I come across things where I feel so fortunate to be able to just even have the have the time to sit and listen to these new things that I discover. because we're always, especially when you're busy, you're just so caught up with the stuff that you have. And then especially working in music, I actually don't listen to music a lot. I mean, last thing I want to do after working all day writing music is also driving home and then listening to more music in the car. Like I tried because I need to have some silence. I need to have some moments of music, and then the car ride is pretty good at that. I mean, you listen to podcasts and maybe news and such, but try to stay away from music, at least in the car. But sometimes I'd have a radio on. I mean, this could be any genre. It doesn't really have to be classical music or film or anything. But sometimes I would hear a pop song. I'd be like, damn, that's good. You know, I can't believe that I didn't know about this. So this is all blabber to say, he said it exactly right. I mean, that's the best way to point out that you can spend your entire life discovering new music, and you wouldn't come even near half of it. Yep. Which is very exciting, which is why I think music moves everybody that way. Everybody likes music, right? Like you don't meet somebody say, I don't like to listen to music like that. That's one universal thing I think we all have to sort of love and joy of listening to music.
Yeah, and between different cultures and places, and it's that's one thing that kind of binds us all, isn't it? It's remarkable what it can do. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Batu. I really, really appreciate it. I just wanted to wish you all the best with some of your future work. Your career is inspirational, and you're going to go on to do amazing things. I just saw the new trailer for the live action How to Train Your Dragon just released, and I'm super excited. So I know you probably
that's what we're working on right now.
You're working on it right now? Yep.
That's right.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's really, really exciting. So I'll be there IMAX opening day for that one.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Cheers.
See you.
Bye.